systems in the cervical spine. Mid, low cervical, and suboccipital, right? So we kind of just went through mid-cervical. If we're not finding reproduction of symptoms there, then we're only left with suboccipital. So we're now beginning to think, well, maybe we're looking more at something there. So we're going to look at our two joints. So mid-cervical, we have several joints. Suboccipital, we only have two. We have OA and we have AA. And then we have a right and a left. So there's really kind of, 4 choices is really what we're looking at. So as we're kind of considering this, with OA, we're not going to be pushing on the occiput to assess OA. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually push on C1. We're going to push on the atlas. We're going to push on C1 and assess motion of OA. Okay? The way that we're going to do that is if we think about the facet joint plane of the OA segment, it's not in that 45-degree orientation like the mid-cervical. It's a little bit different than that. So our force direction for this is we're going to apply force, but we're going to apply force toward the patient's ipsilateral eye. So when you think about force direction here, it's not like the mid-cervical we were just doing where we're going a straight posterior to anterior. Okay, the force direction is actually anterior, but it's superior. It's toward their eye. Okay, so that's the force direction. The next thing is, well, where are we going to push? Okay, so the spot that we're going to push on is going to be on the lateral mass of the atlas, lateral mass of C1. If you remember, C1 is really wide. It's a really wide vertebra. So we're going to kind of go way out on the end of it. A lateral mass, vertebral transverse process, you may want to call it, but they really refer to it as a lateral mass. We're going to kind of push on that. So I want all of you guys to find your lateral mass. So feel your mastoid. Feel your mastoid, feel the angle of the mandible, right? And go right in between those two. Between your mastoid and the angle of the mandible. Right there. If you put your finger in there, it should be uncomfortable. You should feel a little spike of bone. And when you rotate away, if you rotate the opposite way, it should actually poke out into your finger. It's very hard to feel. Some of you will feel it, some of you will not feel it. Okay, but that's actually your lateral mass, way out here. Okay, of C1. We're going to push on the posterior aspect of that. Okay? So here's what you're going to do, right? What's the first spinous process that we can palpate? C2, right? So I'm going to take my fingers, remember the three-finger thing, right? I'm going to take my fingers, and the top finger is going to be on the greater occipital protuberance. The middle finger then should line up with C1, and the third finger should line up with C2, approximately. The way we know that it's C2 is it's the first spinous process. So if I palpate above it, we're not going to feel any spinous process. So I'm just going to find C2, and then I'm going to come up right above it, and I'm going to go out to the side. That's going to be C1. You guys with me? So we kind of estimate by using our 3 fingers. We find that C2 spinous, and then we just pop up within that space where we think C1 is, and then we just slightly migrate out to the side. Okay, so in this case, I'm on Cody's right side here, on that lateral mass and the posterior aspect. And I'm just going to put my thumb there. Okay? Now, one principle that's going to really come back when we start doing mobilization here is the hand contact that we call the dummy thumb hand contact. Okay? So this is going to be my dummy thumb. What does that mean? That means that this thumb is not very smart. Okay? The only thing this thumb has to worry about is being in the right place at the right time. Kind of like me at home with my wife, right? Just tell me where I have to be and when. I'm the dummy thumb, right? She knows what she's doing, tells me where to be and what time, and I'm there. All right, so that's what this guy is. We tell it where to be and what time, and it's there, but that's all it does. It just shows up, okay? This guy does all the work. This thumb is the mobilizing thumb. So what's nice about that is this thumb doesn't have to worry about being at the right place at the right time. It just has to worry about pushing in the right direction. So we have these guys doing different things. So we just find the right spot, and we just kind of hang out there. But then this thumb has to worry about pushing. And where are we going to push? What direction? Ipsilateral eye. So it's not straight down like this. So in the practical, if you're doing this, that would be incorrect, right? But if you're here, you see how I'm kind of like angled upward toward that eye? So this thumb is pushing, and it's mobilizing on that contact. So I'm going to kind of still gather that skin a little bit, get that mobilization gutter. But there's one thumb that's mobilizing, and there's one thumb that's stationary, and I'm just going to kind of push. And I can pretend to think I'm assessing motion. Maybe if you're Stanley Paris, you might say, I feel that. Sorry, Stanley, if you're watching. Kudos to you. Or Jeffrey Maitland. right? But what I'm really focusing on is whether or not I'm causing his symptom. Not just, oh, that's a little uncomfortable. If they were to say that, I would say, but is that the pain that brought you in? Right? So I would just assess that. And then there's C2. I pop over to the other side, dummy thumb, mobilizing thumb, and now I'm going toward the ipsilateral eye here as well. Right? So it should feel like you're contacting. You're not doing CPR. It's not like this, right? But you're in here like this, and you're like right, like when you're water skiing, they take up the toe in the rope, take up the toe in the rope, and then I do this, and as I'm doing it, I just wish that I was water skiing. Okay? So you're doing that. And you're looking for symptoms. So that would be OA.